Wait. Ah, there it is. Hello! I know it's been a little while since I've actually spoken to the camera, so I do apologize if I come off, I don't know, a bit unused to it all. So this will be my first video of 2017, which, I mean, considering the first month is like nearly over, isn't great. For those of you who don't actually know me in real life, I quite like to read. I read quite a bit. So I thought that for this video, I would talk about all the books I read in 2016 and what I thought about them. I actually keep a list of all the books I read, and then I give it a rating out of 10, how long it took me to read it, just so I can look back on it later in case I'm looking for books to reread and whatever. So the first book I read was Love Hurts by Mallory Blackman. But it actually is a bunch of different authors. It's excerpts from books and short stories, just all based around love. The next book I read was The Rosie Project by Graham Simpson. I'm gonna say that's Graham, but then Simpson. I found it really interesting. And also it's based in Australia, so that was an added bonus. The next book I read was Flowers in the Desert, which is actually a play. And I read that because in my drama class that I was attending, we had to do monologues for our exam, and we had to read the play so that we knew what our character was talking about, so I read that. The next book I read was Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. I really enjoyed this book. I think I've read every Rainbow Rowell book. I really like her writing style, and this book's actually based off of Fangirl, and I read Fangirl before I read this. I think you can really read them in either order, but I think it was nice reading Fangirl first, because this book's basically the fan fiction that the main character from Fangirl was writing, and Rainbow Rowell actually made it into a book, so that was really fun, and I really enjoyed it. The next book I read was The Bone Season by, I can't remember, I didn't write down who it was by. I'll have it there or there. So you'll see the author's name, sorry, I didn't remember it. Really enjoyed it, really good. I keep on saying that, but I had a good pick this year. The next book I read was I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. And yeah, really recommend, very good. The next book I read was The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey, not entirely sure. It's more of a thriller, and I really enjoyed it. I definitely got a bit spooked at some points. That was really exciting to read. The next book I read was Landline, also by Rainbow Rowell. I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak, and Marcus Zusak actually wrote The Book Thief, which is my favorite book of all time. So I had to see what other stuff he's written. And then I read Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, which I just loved. It's quite a thick book. The copy I've got is about 500 pages, but it's quite small font, so it's a big word count, and yeah, just love it. Love this book. The next book I read was The Duff, which is the Designated Ugly Fat Friend, which I remember I was reading this in class when an English teacher came up to me and went, "What's that book called?" You've probably heard of it because it was made into a movie quite recently. I then read The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon. So that's the author of Bone Season. I remember now. So this is the sequel. You'll also see it's also quite thick. Gosh, I forgot how thick this book was. Yeah, ended on such a cliffhanger, and I'm really looking forward to find out what happens next. I then read Sisters of Blood and Spirit by Katie Cross, and about these twins, and when they were born, one of them died and was a stillborn, but the other twin can still see her as a ghost, and it's about all the things that happen in their town, and no one else can see her, and yeah, it was really interesting read. I then read the sequel, which is Sisters of Salt and Iron, and yeah, I really enjoyed the sequel as well. I then read The Sky is Everywhere, also by Jandy Nelson, the same author who did I'll Give You the Sun. If you see, the front covers are very similar, which I thought was very cool. I didn't actually originally know if this was a sequel, but it's not. They're completely unrelated. It's just obviously a theme she's got. I then read After You by Jojo Moyes, which is the sequel to Me Before You. I won't say too much about it because I don't want to give away the ending of Me Before You in case you haven't watched the movie or read the book, but yeah, really good read. I then read I Am Malala. Honestly, I think such an inspirational, hard-hitting, just a book that I feel like everyone needs to read. I then read Of Mice and Men with a school book, which is why I don't have my own copy, but I should probably get anyway. I then also read To Kill a Mockingbird. Fantastic. Again, I think it's on that list of books you just have to read. Fantastic book. I then read 1984, which obviously is another huge classic. 1984. I mean, it's one of those books that could have been written today. The next book I read was called Mortified, which was such a fun book to read. It was this author who went around collecting old diary entries and old stories from people about just mortifying things that had happened to them in their youth. And yeah, such a funny read. I then also read Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, which I thought was a fantastic book. I've tried to read books recently that, you know, are all about living in the moment and trying to be kind and trying to live the best life you can, because we've got such a short amount of time here at all. And that was definitely one of those books. It just really hit home and I really, really enjoyed it. I then read Here Comes the Sun, which I think I actually downloaded it because Here Comes the Sun is my favorite song. There was very rarely a point in the book where I was actually happy or anything really good happened. So it was a very dark book, a lot of very mature themes as well. I then read On the Other Side by Miss Carrie Hope Fletcher, which is her first fiction book. How pretty is the cover? But yeah, I'm really interested to see, because I think she's working on a new book as well, I think she's mentioned. I've followed her for a few years, like, on social media. I actually was really lucky and got to meet her at Stage Door after seeing her play Eponine in Les Mis. And obviously absolutely lovely. It was really good and I'm really looking forward to what she writes next. I then read The Tiny Wife by Andrew Kaufman, Us by David Nichols, Billy and Me by Miss Giovanna Fletcher, which I loved. It was great. I follow her YouTube channel and I think she's lovely. I like how in her writing style, I actually couldn't really tell it was her who'd written it. It didn't sound like she was just telling me a story. It sounded like it was coming from the main character, which I think is very difficult to do when she does a lot of online blogging and talking and vlogging. So I think it was great that for some stages through the book, I would forget it was by her. And then following that, I then read the Christmas novella, which is Christmas with Billy and Me, which was lovely, so sweet. I then read Enduring Love by Ian McEwan, Shoeless Joe by W.P. Kinsella, Broom by Emma Donoghue, I think that's... All these authors have really difficult last names, but yeah, I'm sure that's Donoghue. I think this could be the book I enjoyed the most this year. Could not put it down. I know that that's a phrase that gets tossed about, but really, I was just addicted to finding out what happened next. It was so interesting hearing these adult, mature problems from the perspective of a 5-year-old who didn't quite understand everything. I then read The Kite Runner, The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. I then read 1 Million Lovely Letters, one of those books that made me, you know, question how I lived my life, wanted me to be such a kinder, more positive person. If you ever feel like you need a book like that, this is definitely the one to read. The 1+1 by Jojo Moyes, who is the same author who wrote Me Before You and After You. Okay, we're nearly there. Last 5. I then read Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. Capote? I think it's Capote. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Peggy and Me by Miss Miranda Hart. I actually got this for my birthday from my mum because she knows how much I love Miranda Hart. Her book, it was like having a chat with her. The way she writes is exactly as she talks. My penultimate book for the year was then The Department of Speculation. The final book I read was one of Miranda Hart's other books called Is It Just Me, which was just, I loved it just as much as Peggy and Me. So that rounds off all of the books that I read in 2016. Feel free to tell me some of your favorites from last year and what you thought about some of the ones that I read, and recommendations, please. I think I'm going to have to really buckle down and read. Bearing in mind I also have school and exams and plays and such, but I will try my hardest. If I can get to 45, because that's 5 more than I read last year, that'd be great. Don't think I'll get to 50. I would have to have already read 4 books by now to get to 50. Unless I read super fast or cheat and read lots of very short books. Don't think I'll get to 50. But hey, who knows? I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you all very soon. Bye. Book. That's okay. I can edit.
Sorry, I thought you were talking to somebody. You're vlogging.
I'm talking about all the books I read last year.
No worries.
Love you.